The thing that really kicked everything off wasn't some emotional conversation or a mysterious phone message. It was a cardboard box. A regular-looking, tape-sealed, brown box left on our porch without a return address. No labels, no branding, nothing. Just my name scribbled in permanent marker across the top in handwriting I didn't recognize. If you've ever had one of those moments where the air around you feels too quiet, like even the birds stop to watch you open something, that was this. I was standing there in my khakis and slippers, coffee mug in hand, staring at this mystery delivery like it might explode or contain anthrax. I hesitated before bringing it inside, more curious than suspicious at that point. There was no reason to be alarmed. At least, not yet. Elise, my wife, was in the shower when I carried it in. The sound of water rushing behind the bathroom door gave me a few minutes alone, which I didn't know I needed until I slit the tape with a kitchen knife and peeled the flaps back. The first thing I saw was a flash drive, bright red, resting on top of a thick layer of bubble wrap. And under it, a stack of printed photos, neatly banded together. Still not alarmed. At this point, I thought maybe it was something from an old friend or some elaborate joke from one of our neighbors. Elise and I had lived in that neighborhood for 4 years, and people did weird things sometimes, like dropping off pies anonymously or leaving cryptic notes during Halloween. But as soon as I held the first photo in my hands, that theory evaporated. It was Elise. She was in our living room, sitting on the couch, the same one I'd just passed on the way in, with her legs tucked underneath her, smiling. But she wasn't alone. There was a man beside her, his hand on her thigh, her hand resting on his. He wasn't anyone I recognized. He had a buzz cut, some kind of uniform or workwear, maybe a mechanic or a warehouse guy. His face was too close to hers for it to be innocent. The kind of closeness you only allow when it's not just friendship. My stomach twisted, but it was the next few pictures that made my chest go cold. The second photo showed them kissing. Not just some polite peck. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, his hand was tangled in her hair. The lighting was low. It wasn't daylight. This wasn't someone catching a spontaneous moment. It was staged, deliberate, as if someone had set up a hidden camera. Which meant someone had. In my house. Elise, I called, my voice tighter than I expected. The shower kept going. I stood there, photos in hand, staring at that red flash drive on the table. Against better judgment, I plugged it into my laptop. The folder that popped up had one file, a video. I hesitated, clicked it, and watched maybe 10 seconds before slamming the lid shut. The visuals weren't even the worst part. It was the audio. Her laugh. That laugh she used with me when we first started dating. The one that slowly vanished over the years as routine and life wore us down. She gave it to him. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. I didn't say anything when she came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her head, humming like it was just another Tuesday morning. I didn't throw the photos at her or scream or demand an explanation. I sat at the kitchen table, acting like I was looking at an old utility bill, nodding when she asked if I wanted her to pick up dog food after work. I said sure. She smiled and left. And I sat there for another 30 minutes without moving, just staring at the wall, feeling like someone had rewired my entire body without telling me. You know what's crazy? I didn't even cry. Not that morning. Not that day. I think my mind was in overdrive, too focused on piecing things together, on rewinding the past few months in my head to find the cracks I missed. Elise had changed, sure, but nothing drastic. A few later nights here and there. A little more attention to her appearance. Some unexplained expenses she brushed off. But I hadn't suspected anything serious. Definitely not someone coming into our house while I was at work, making themselves comfortable on our couch, touching my wife like they lived there. When she got back that evening, I was ready. Calm still. The photos were gone. I'd hidden the box in the attic for now. She came in carrying groceries and some overpriced organic crap I never asked for. She kissed my cheek. I asked about her day. She talked about some client who canceled last minute and how it threw off her whole schedule. I nodded. She never even noticed I was staring a little too long. Never flinched, which only made it worse. That night, lying beside her in bed, I couldn't sleep. I listened to her breathing, thinking about how that mouth had kissed someone else not that long ago. How that body I used to know like my own had been given to someone else in the same space we once shared. And she didn't even look guilty. Didn't even seem different. That's what shook me the most. She wasn't distant or nervous. She was just normal. Which meant this wasn't her first time. This was just routine now. I didn't plan a confrontation right away. I'm not impulsive like that. I knew I needed more than just emotional rage. I needed a strategy. So I went back to that flash drive the next day, copied everything, backed it up in a hidden folder, emailed it to myself from a burner account. Then I started watching. Not accusing. Just observing. I needed to know who the guy was, how long this had been going on, how far it had gone. And I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, it wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a demolition. The following week was slow and filled with a level of focus I hadn't experienced in years. I was up early every day, pretending to go through the same old routine, but every movement was calculated. I kept a notepad hidden in my car where I wrote down everything she did, when she left, when she came home, if she brought anything back with her, what she wore, and if there were changes in her schedule that she didn't bother to mention. It was boring work, but I wasn't going to confront her with half a story. I wanted every detail. I needed it to make sense in my head. Elise had never been the reckless type. She didn't flirt with strangers. She didn't party. If there was someone else, it meant something had been building for a while. I needed to know what that looked like. 3 days later, on a Thursday, I told her I had to travel to Raleigh for a system upgrade at one of our partner offices. She didn't even ask questions. Just reminded me to take a phone charger and promised she'd pick up my prescription refill while I was away. I nodded, grabbed my bag, and left for the hotel down the street. I parked in the back, used the alias I had on an old work ID to check in, and waited. It was simple. She thought I was gone, and that gave her room to make her next move. If she was bold enough to do it while I was in the house, she sure as hell would feel free while I was 2 hours away. That night, around 9:40 p.m., a small white pickup pulled into our driveway. It had a dent on the back left panel and some kind of roofing company sticker on the passenger door. I had a pair of binoculars in my bag, not something I ever thought I'd use outside of a football game, and I locked onto the guy as he stepped out. Same haircut, same guy from the photo. He wasn't dressed up, just jeans and a hoodie. He walked in like he'd done it 100 times. No hesitation. She opened the door in shorts and a sweatshirt like it was a casual meetup, and they disappeared into the house without even looking around. I didn't need to watch much after that. I waited until the lights in the living room dimmed and then drove away. I didn't want to see more. I already had the video, and what I needed now was information. The next morning, I stopped by the job site listed on the truck. It wasn't hard to find the company. It was plastered on the side of his vehicle like a personal invitation. I walked into the office pretending to be a customer looking for roof work. They handed me a card with his name on it. Nathan. That was it. The guy's name was Nathan. 32 years old, single, and apparently very comfortable with boundaries that didn't belong to him. That night I went home, and Elise greeted me at the door with a smile and a hug. I couldn't figure out how she was so calm. Maybe she believed I'd never find out, or maybe she didn't care. Maybe that was worse. I stood there, staring at her, listening to her talk about the grocery store and some rude woman who cut in front of her in the checkout line, and all I could think about was how her face looked in that video, how she tilted her head when she laughed with him, and how she touched him the way she used to touch me. She finished talking and asked, "Are you okay? You're quiet." I shrugged and told her I was just tired from the drive. She smiled again, leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said, "I'll go start dinner." Over the next 2 days, I made copies of the photos and the video. I saved them in 3 different drives and locked them in different locations. One at work, one in my desk drawer at home, and one with my friend Aaron, who didn't ask any questions when I handed him the flash drive and said, "Keep this safe. If anything ever happens, open it." He looked confused but nodded. I trusted him. He had gone through a messy divorce a couple years back and understood that life doesn't always fall apart in one big crash. It erodes slowly, bit by bit, until you wake up and realize you're standing in the ruins of something you thought was solid. Sunday night came, and Elise suggested we go out for dinner. "You've been working hard, and we haven't had a proper date in weeks," she said. I agreed. I wanted to see how far she'd push this charade. We went to this quiet little place we both liked, got a table by the window, and ordered our usual. She was all smiles and soft eyes, like nothing had changed. I listened as she talked about plans for renovating the guest room, her clients at the studio, a new protein shake she hated, and how Kevin had started limping again after their walk. I nodded, engaged just enough to keep her talking, but my mind was racing. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, but I was getting closer. On the way home, I drove in silence. She asked me if something was wrong again. "No," I said. "Just thinking." She reached over, squeezed my hand, and said, I'm glad we had tonight. I missed us. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I squeezed her hand back and said, me too. What she didn't know was that I had a plan. I had more than proof. I had timing. And when I finally told her what I knew, it wasn't going to be in private. She was going to feel it the same way I did, loud, undeniable, and unforgettable. I knew that the only way to make the confrontation count was to take away the place where she could spin the story. No more privacy, no room for her to fake emotions or act confused. I wasn't interested in her excuses. I wanted honesty, the kind you can't run from, the kind you have to look straight at. That meant doing it somewhere public, where she couldn't scream, cry, or manipulate her way through it. I picked a place where she'd never expected, her studio. She had a routine of going in early on Mondays to clean up and prepare for her first clients. No one else would be there for at least an hour. I knew that because I checked her schedule when she left her tablet open on the kitchen counter the week before. It showed her first appointment was always at 9 a.m. on Mondays. She got in by 7:45. I decided I would be there by 7:30. I didn't sleep much the night before. I stayed up going over everything, thinking about what I'd say, how I'd say it, and what her reaction might be. I wasn't angry anymore, not in that wild, impulsive way. My anger had settled into something harder, something sharper. It wasn't about yelling or name-calling. It was about control. She took something from me without asking, and now I was going to take something from her. Not her keys or her car or her studio. Her comfort. That feeling she had that she could do this and still walk around like everything was fine. That was what I was going to crush. The next morning, I got there early and parked behind the building. I waited until I saw her car pull in, then gave her 2 minutes to get inside. The front door was unlocked, which didn't surprise me. She always said the place was in a safe part of town. I walked in and closed the door behind me. She was in the back, putting towels into a basket. She didn't hear me at first, so I stood in the doorway of the main studio room and waited. When she turned and saw me, she smiled like it was normal. "Marcus? What are you doing here?" she asked, setting the basket down on the counter. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice level. Her smile faded, but she still tried to play it cool. "Okay, what's up? You look serious." "I know everything, Elise. I know about him. I know he's been in our house. I know what you've been doing while I was at work. I've seen the photos. I've seen the video. You can stop pretending now." She didn't move for a few seconds. Her face twitched slightly, and then she crossed her arms like she was trying to protect herself, but it was too late for that. I wasn't looking for her to deny it. I wanted to see how fast the truth would come out once she knew there was no way out of it. "Who sent you that?" she asked. That was her first response. Not denial. Not shock. Just that. "I don't know who they are, but they know you," I said. "They know our living room, they know your schedule, and they knew exactly how to get it to me. Doesn't really matter who. What matters is you didn't think I'd ever find out." She didn't answer. She just stared at me like she was hoping I'd disappear if she waited long enough. But I wasn't going anywhere. "So how long has it been going on?" I asked. She let out a small breath and looked away. "A few months. With someone you let into our house, while I was working to keep everything together," I said. "Do you have any idea what that feels like?" "I didn't plan it," she said, still avoiding my eyes. "It just happened." "That's the excuse? It just happened? So one day he walks in, and you forget you're married? Forget you're lying to me every day? I wasn't trying to hurt you. You think that makes it better? You think that changes anything?" She finally looked at me, and for a second, I saw something close to regret in her eyes, but it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't here for apologies. I was here to tell her what came next. "I'm not going to scream," I said. "I'm not going to break anything. But I'm done. You're going to pack a bag today, and you're going to stay somewhere else. I already talked to a lawyer. I've got everything documented. Photos, messages, video. You don't get to keep playing both sides like nothing happened. You want to throw away our whole marriage over this?" she asked, finally raising her voice. "No," I said. "You already did that. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. You're overreacting. You had another man in my house, Elise, while I was paying the bills and walking around thinking we were okay. You don't get to decide how I react." She tried to say something else, but I walked out. I didn't want to hear another excuse, another half-truth. I had what I needed. I'd said what I needed to say. And for the first time in weeks, I felt clear. I drove home, packed up her things, left them neatly by the front door, and changed the locks before she even texted me. When she did, it was just 3 words. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. After I left the studio, everything around me felt quiet, but inside I was finally moving. For weeks, I had been stuck in a cycle of waiting, pretending, trying to read signs and collect proof like I was building a court case. Now there was nothing left to discover. I had all the answers I needed. The facts were simple. Elise had betrayed me, repeatedly and knowingly, right under my roof. The time for questions and wondering was over. Now I wanted control, not just of the situation but of how this ended. I wasn't going to be the guy who got cheated on and then sat back while people whispered about it or waited to see what I would do. If she wanted to play with people's trust, then I was going to show her what it looked like when the consequences weren't whispered in private. The next day, I called her parents and asked if I could come by. Her dad answered, surprised to hear from me on a weekday. Of course, son. Everything okay? I said we needed to talk. I wasn't going to tell them over the phone. Elise had always painted herself as their perfect daughter, the one who made the right choices, stayed out of trouble, and treated her marriage like a serious commitment. They never had a clue what she was capable of, and I decided it was time they did. When I got to their place, they were already waiting in the living room. Her mom smiled and motioned to the couch. You look tired, Marcus. Is work wearing you down? I sat down and looked at both of them. I'm going to get straight to the point, I said. Elise has been cheating on me. I have proof, photos, messages, even a video. This has been going on for months, and I found out 2 weeks ago. I confronted her yesterday. Her dad sat back, stunned, and her mom covered her mouth. Neither of them said anything right away. I didn't expect them to. After a long pause, her dad asked, Are you sure, Marcus? Is there any chance this is a misunderstanding? I wish it was. I really do, I said. But there's no confusion here. She brought this man into our house. She spent time with him like I didn't exist. And she kept doing it without any sign of guilt. Her mom was crying now. I don't understand. Why would she do this? You two always seemed happy. That's what I thought too, I said. But apparently that wasn't enough for her. I didn't come here to make things worse between you and her. I came because I know what kind of people you are. You raised her, and you deserve to know the truth. I'm not hiding it. I'm not keeping secrets so she can protect her image while I sit quietly and watch everything fall apart. They nodded slowly. I could tell they were processing it all, and I didn't expect them to take my side immediately. But I left them copies of the photos and the summary of what I'd seen and learned. I'm filing for divorce, I told them. And I've already told her to move out. She hasn't responded yet, but I'm not waiting around. That was only the first stop. I planned the rest of the day the same way I planned every system upgrade at work. Step by step, nothing rushed, every action with a purpose. I sent out a short email to our closest mutual friends, just a few lines explaining that Elise and I were separating, and that I discovered she had been unfaithful. I didn't go into graphic detail. I didn't need to. People could figure it out. I wasn't interested in defending myself later when the story started spreading and she began twisting it to make herself look better. I made sure my side was the first one they heard. After that, I called her studio partner, the woman who helped Elise run the place, and let her know what was happening. I think you should be aware of what's going on, I said. Your business partner has been meeting a guy at the studio when she said she was working late. She's used the space for things that had nothing to do with clients. And now she's being removed from our house for it. I don't know if that affects your partnership, but I'd want to know if it were me. There was a long silence on the other end. I appreciate you telling me, she said quietly. I had no idea. She probably thought no one would ever say anything. But now you know. That night, Elise finally showed up at the house. I was in the kitchen when I heard her car door slam. She knocked instead of using her key, which meant she saw the locks had been changed. I opened the door and didn't step aside. You changed the locks? She asked, already irritated. I told you to find somewhere else to stay, I replied. That wasn't just a suggestion. I need to get my things. They're packed. In the garage. She tried to look past me, but I didn't move. This is ridiculous, Marcus. You're making this worse than it has to be. You already did that. I'm just finishing what you started. I'm still your wife. No, you're not. Not anymore. You just haven't signed the papers yet. She didn't argue after that. She just turned around and walked to the garage. I watched her load the bags into her car without saying another word. When she was done, she stood there for a second like she wanted to say something, but then she got in the car and left. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like I won anything, but I felt in control again. And that was enough for now. I thought I'd feel something when she finally pulled away, when the garage door shut behind her car and the house went quiet again. Maybe relief, maybe satisfaction, maybe even sadness, but instead there was nothing. Just silence. No chaos, no shouting, no mess. She was just gone. I sat down at the kitchen table with a coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier and stared at the spot where her shoes used to sit by the door. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I thought I had. That was the part one couldn't stop thinking about. The idea that I'd built my life around someone who'd been lying to me for months and didn't even flinch while doing it. She texted me later that night. It was long. She went on about how she never meant to destroy what we had, how she got lost in the routine of everything, how she didn't feel seen anymore, and how Nathan had just happened to be someone who made her feel noticed. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I didn't want her to think I was interested in hearing her explain why she threw away a marriage over some temporary attention. She asked if we could talk, in person, one last time. I ignored it. The next morning she tried again. Same tone, same empty words. This time she said it wasn't about fixing anything, just that she felt like we needed to say something real before it ended completely. I thought about it for a while and finally agreed. Not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted her to hear how all of this looked from my side. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was still sitting around confused or heartbroken. I wanted her to know exactly what she had done, in plain words, and what the consequences were going to be. We met at a small park just outside town, a place we used to go when we wanted to get away from things. She picked it. I didn't argue. It was quiet when I got there. She was already waiting, sitting on one of the benches by the path with a water bottle in her hand. She stood up when she saw me, then sat back down without saying anything. I sat beside her, not too close. I just wanted to talk without all the anger, she said finally. I know you hate me right now. I don't hate you, I said. I just don't know who you are anymore. I'm still me, she replied, but even she didn't sound convinced. No, you're not. The person I married wouldn't have done this. Wouldn't have lied to my face for months. Wouldn't have brought someone else into our home and acted like nothing was wrong. She looked down at her hands. It didn't start out the way you think. I wasn't looking for anything. It just happened. You said that already, I said. But it didn't just happen. It kept happening. Over and over. You made that choice every single time. I know, she said quietly. I let the silence sit there for a moment before I spoke again. You could have told me. You could have said something months ago. If you were unhappy, if you were confused, if something wasn't working, you had every chance to talk to me. But you didn't. You just pretended. You let me go to work, come home, plan dinners, make time for you, while you were sneaking around with someone else. I was afraid you'd leave, she said, her voice cracking. I left anyway, I replied. The difference is now I'm leaving on my terms, not yours. She wiped at her eyes. I know I hurt you. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You'll regret the consequences, not what you did, I said. Because if you regretted it, you wouldn't have kept doing it. You wouldn't have lied every day. This wasn't one mistake. It was 100 little decisions that you made knowing exactly what they meant. She nodded slowly, not looking at me. I don't know how to fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said. We're not going back. There's no version of this where we pretend it didn't happen and try to rebuild. That trust is gone. That life is gone. All we're doing now is closing the door properly. She didn't argue with that. She didn't say anything for a long time. We just sat there, listening to the wind moving through the trees. I loved you, she said finally. I still do, in some way. Then you should have protected what we had, I said. Because love without respect isn't anything. She stood up after that, like she didn't have anything left to say. I'll sign whatever you need. I won't drag this out. Good, I said. That's the least you can do. She walked away without turning back. I stayed on the bench for a while after she left, letting the conversation settle in my head. There was no satisfaction in that meeting, no moment that made it all better. But it was real, honest. No more pretending. No more guessing. After that last conversation in the park, everything moved quickly. Elise signed the divorce papers 2 days later and sent them back through her lawyer without any additional demands or drawn-out arguments. There were no disputes about the house, no talks about spousal support, no attempts to negotiate any kind of delay. She didn't fight for anything, which told me she had already let go long before I ever confronted her. That might have bothered me more than anything. Not because I wanted her to beg or try to fix it, but because it confirmed that I had been living with someone who had emotionally checked out while still showing up at the dinner table and pretending to care about what movie we were going to watch that night. I stayed quiet through it all, handled everything through my attorney, and didn't reach out again. The house felt different after she left. Not empty, just cleaner. Like I could finally walk into a room and breathe without trying to figure out what was fake and what was real. I didn't change anything right away. Her shoes were gone, her makeup wasn't scattered on the bathroom counter, and the second toothbrush was out of the cup. I left it all that way for a few weeks, not because I missed her, but because I wanted to sit with the silence. I wanted to feel what it was like to be in the same space without having to question someone else's loyalty every time they left the room. My friends started checking in more often. A couple of them knew about the situation from the messages I sent earlier, but most waited until the papers were finalized before reaching out. I appreciated it. I wasn't looking for advice or someone to tell me I was better off. I just wanted honesty, and they gave me that without trying to fix anything. My brother came by one weekend and brought a box of things I'd left at his place last year. We sat on the porch with a couple of drinks, and after an hour of small talk, he asked, "You feel better now that it's done?" "I feel normal," I said. "That's enough for me." "You think she'll ever try to come back around?" "No. And even if she did, there's nothing here for her anymore." He nodded and didn't push the topic. We talked about work, about his kids, about our parents' anniversary coming up. It felt good to talk about something else, finally, without everything coming back to her. Over the next few months, I started getting back to things I had put aside during the last couple years of our marriage. I signed up for a class downtown, something simple, just woodworking on the weekends. I started going to the gym again, not because I was trying to prove something, but because I finally had the mental space to focus on myself without feeling like I was being pulled in two directions. I even started spending more time with coworkers outside of work, which I used to avoid because I didn't want to deal with questions about my relationship or explain why my wife never joined us for anything. One afternoon, I was having lunch with a couple of guys from the office when one of them asked, "You ever think about dating again?" I laughed, not because it was a funny question, but because it came out of nowhere. "Not really. I'm still figuring out what I even want right now." "That's fair," he said. "Just know not every person's going to do what she did." "I know," I said, "but I'm not in a hurry. I'm not scared of being alone." And that was the truth. I wasn't bitter or paranoid. I wasn't carrying her mistake around like it was going to poison everything after it. But I wasn't going to lower my guard just to avoid feeling alone. I was fine with my own company, fine with making my own decisions and not having to consider someone who couldn't even be honest with me. By the time our divorce was officially recorded by the court, it felt like it had already been over for a year. I got the confirmation in the mail on a Tuesday afternoon, a simple envelope with a few lines of legal text saying our marriage was legally ended. I sat down with it at the kitchen table, opened it, read it once, then tossed it in the drawer with my other documents. I didn't feel anything dramatic. No weight lifted, no rush of freedom. Just closure. The kind that doesn't shout. It just settles in. A week later, I got a message from one of Elise's friends. Someone we used to see at dinners, someone I hadn't heard from since everything went public. She said she didn't want to take sides, but she wanted me to know Elise had left town, sold her share of the studio and moved out of state. No big announcement, no goodbye posts on social media, just gone. I thanked her for letting me know and deleted the message. I didn't care where Elise went. She had already left the moment she decided her comfort was more important than our trust. Her physical absence now was just the final piece. The thing is, betrayal doesn't break you all at once. It wears through you, quietly, slowly, until one day you realize you've stopped recognizing the person you're sharing a life with. What I learned from all of this wasn't just that people can lie or cheat or keep secrets. I already knew that. What I learned is that silence can be just as destructive as any argument. That pretending everything is fine to avoid discomfort does more damage than the truth ever could. Now I speak plainly. I move carefully. And I don't apologize for asking questions. I rebuilt my life without her, not because I had to, but because I chose to. And if nothing else, I know exactly who I am now. Not broken. Not bitter. Just done. And that's more than enough for me.